Hello, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to another thing where I talk about things. Today, I would like to talk about the new Rainbow Dash Presents, Star in Yellow. I hope those of you guys who have seen it already enjoyed it, and those who are going to see it will enjoy it. Anyway, I just thought I would talk about kind of the production process and some of the stuff that went into it, a bit of the writing. This one is probably a little bit closer of an adaptation than most of the stuff that we did. I contacted Blue Shift ahead of time, quite a ways back. I sent them an email and I was like, do you mind if we do a Rainbow Dash Presents on Star in Yellow? And they were like, yeah, it would be cool. So I got to work, like, this was maybe, man, it might have been I know it was last year sometime, that I actually sat down and I wrote the script out for this thing. And of course, those of you who read the script, you know it's like a three-part script, or it's like 3.5 parts or something like that. So it's actually quite long, and unfortunately, we wound up cutting some characters and some events and some stuff like that. Some of the more clever details, there are a couple people who were like, oh, that was clever. That actually came from the fic. Like, one thing that happened, like, at the very beginning, where Spike took his fire breath, and he had this chained-up book he couldn't get. He breathes fire on the book, and then boom, you know, the book appears next to him. That was actually in the fic, and so there are a couple things. There's a lot of really clever writing in the fic, and overall, it's a good read. It's a good fic. The fic itself is kind of about the Mary Sue thing. It's about, like, Rainbow Dash writes her own autobiography, but it's full of all this stuff about, like, how great Rainbow Dash is, and she has eye lasers and all these magic powers and things like that. And she changes the character's name to, like, Danebo Rash or something like that to hide that she's actually the main character. And so Twilight scolds her, she gets on her case, and she's all like, you know, this is not how you're supposed to write, this is not good writing, and Dash is like, oh, that sucks. But then Twilight gets sucked into this other little book about kind of this sort of Mary Sue character, and it's again, it's kind of like an autobiography. It's written from the perspective of this little kid, and this little kid, you know, looks at herself and she's just like, I am the best pony, you know. So she writes this whole thing. She's incredibly magically powerful, and it becomes gradually apparent. And I'll go ahead and I'm going to throw out spoilers during this, but it becomes apparent that the book is actually about Celestia. Celestia when she was a kid, when she was growing up. Now, we added some more sinister undertones to the whole thing. Like the story in Yellow Star, Celestia is kind of this benevolent and kind-hearted ruler. And so as a child, she's still kind of benevolent and kind-hearted. She just doesn't realize that she's a little overbearing at times. So she's writing this stuff, and like she keeps writing about how everybody loves her and all this stuff happens. And then occasionally she gets blindsided by reality, like people in her life die, or like her sister turns on her, you know, like things happen. Her father has to go in the smooth. And that actually, in the fic, it mentions her father, but her father's not like a bad guy. It's not a thing. We just had we mixed a bit of our own sort of Tyrant Celestia stuff, their all-powerful deity background in there, and sort of made it to where the whole thing was a little, like I say, a little bit darker. But in the original fic, though, like Celestia's father, after her mother dies, Celestia's father comes to Celestia and he goes, you are a bad daughter. I have to go in the smooze now because you are such a bad daughter. And so he just goes and he walks off and he dies in the smooze. And this was before the smooze actually appeared in the Generation 4 of My Little Pony. This is based off of the G1 smooze, of course, if you guys are familiar. And that was like a thing that just swept over the countryside and devoured everything in its path. And I don't know if it killed ponies or not. G1 My Little Pony. Apparently ponies sometimes died, or were at least transformed into things. Like, Applejack gets transformed into a monster of some sort, and I think they never turn her back. Like, she's just permanently gone. Applejack dead. Or as good as dead. Anyway. T-Rex does it, actually. T-Rex was a character from Generation 1. T-Rex has like this, yeah, I think he has like a bag full of evil or something like that. It just opens up the bag and the evil transforms. It just kills Applejack. So, you know, Applejack dead. I don't think she was quite the character, or I don't know if she was as pivotal. I don't know if she was like a main character in the original show in the Generation 1. But I never really watched much of Generation 1 My Little Pony, so I don't know a whole lot about it. But yeah, anyway though, the whole fic itself, it was written back before Alicorns were really a thing. Like you had Princess Celestia and Luna, and those were the only Alicorns that you got. And so everybody was writing a lot of fan fiction. There was all kinds of like speculative ideas. And occasionally you would get someone who would write like a new Alicorn into the series. And oftentimes, because it would be like a male writer, like a young male writer, he would write in, you know, like this is, I am an Alicorn, like I am a young eligible male Alicorn, and I'm all powerful, and it would be all about him like hiding his power or using his power to impress the girls or something like that. You know, like what would you do if you were all powerful? Oh, I would go have sex. Like that's kind of where that would often go. And it was severely frowned upon, because the idea was that, like, you know, that's like just having there be a new god, you know, like you have this pantheon of 2 sisters, and that's all that there is. You can't just like have, oh, here's this third guy, he's like a god, because what does he govern, you know? If he's a god, then he has to, you know, they lift the moon and the sun, and so he would have to, like, I don't know, move the waves in the ocean or something like that, although that's, you know, the moon has influence on that. It's not just the moon that does that, but you know, come on, come on. So yeah, so this fic, I believe, was written even before the Canterlot wedding thing, even before Cadence came around. And Cadence originally, following the production talk about My Little Pony, Cadence was not supposed to be an Alicorn. She was not supposed to be a princess. She was just supposed to be Twilight's former babysitter. But Hasbro wanted to do a pink princess toy, and so they were like, yes, Cadence, she will be pink. She will be a princess. She will be a god. And lo and behold, there she was. And so she never came across as having that sort of godlike power. Cadence was always weird, because she wasn't initially envisioned as a god. When she showed up, it was like, no, well, here she is, and yeah, she's an Alicorn. She's like all powerful like that, but doesn't actually express any power. And I think eventually they just kind of reconciled that as like, well, she's the I don't know, she's the Alicorn of love, and that's kind of powerful unto itself. So there we go. And they just sort of never really address it. And then later on, you know, in season 3, Twilight becomes an Alicorn. She explodes and then comes back, and she's no longer snarky. She's just this happy little princess. And that one too is sort of funny, because for like 2 seasons, I think, the writers clearly didn't know what to do with that. They were just like, well, this character's a god now. This was formerly our main character. This was the character that was supposed to be the audience surrogate. She would walk into an unusual place and say, boy, this is unusual. And then the audience would know how unusual that place was. But nowadays, she walks into a place and she goes, wait, everybody, let me give you like some kind of aphorism for friendship. And everyone's like, wow, thanks, wisdom, Twilight. Thank you for your wisdom. And I don't know, she's a different character now. But I think they didn't know what to do with that, because it was such a big deal, like writing wise, like as far as what they had established, it was like, yeah, you're a princess and a god, and so I think in like season, I don't know, I can't remember if they did this at all in season 5, but I think it wasn't until finally like season 6 that Pony started to say like, oh, the god of friendship, cool, that's who you are, you and your 5 friends. And I guess you have a couple of other friends, like, I don't know, more like acquaintances. You don't hang out with them. But, I mean, yeah. So Twilight, though, like after they did that to her, she stopped appearing quite as much. Instead of being like a pivotal main character, she became more of a, I don't know, I feel like she took a more ancillary role. And part of that is because Twilight's power had gotten so big that a lot of problems could have been resolved by just having Twilight sort of throw magic at it. If they'd really wanted, like they could just have her cast a spell. I mean, even in like Rarity's boutique, they did an episode with a boutique. Like Rarity had to set up her boutique out in like Manhattan or whatever, and this is another thing that's gotten weird, is they're doing a lot more post-industrial stuff, but that's aside from the point. And anyway, though, Rarity had these problems. She's like, oh no, there's spider webs everywhere, and you would think that at the point that you become like godlike in power, you could just cast a spell, and you'd be like, yeah, I'll just magically make all the spider webs go away. But instead, they had to spend the whole episode like cleaning and working and fighting through a conflict, because if you don't have a conflict to overcome, there's not really a story, and so you find that they got around Twilight being all powerful by just ignoring the fact that she has any power. So that's what I mean when they say it seems like they didn't know what to do with the character once they blew her up and turned her into a god. Is they just kind of looked at it and they were like, well, great, like we're so screwed on so many angles. Like, what do we do? Like, do we acknowledge how? Do we make her a god? Like, do we acknowledge that she's a princess? Does she have any additional power? Like, what do we do? And I think they just never really hammered it out. But Starry in Yellow, though, coming back to that, the whole idea behind that was they just took this little character, this little Alicorn, Yellow Star, and she was just this sort of like powerful, like she's the best pony, she's great, everybody loves her. And as the fic is going along, she kind of takes over Twilight's mind, and Twilight is just like, yes, like this character is great, this character is powerful. And Twilight wants to see her like rise up and ascend to the throne and do all these other important things. because she's just this little powerful, this sort of like little usurper. She's gonna take over essentially. She's powerful enough to do it. She's like another Alicorn, and this is kind of the thing that's interesting. Is back when they were just the two gods. One controlled the day and one controlled the night. And within the lore of the show, even that was untenable. Eventually, one of the characters got upset and then tried to take over complete control and said, like, no, I'm just in charge now. Like, I don't need my sister. I'm gonna run it by myself. So there was a little bit of, push and pull, and eventually they snapped. And of course, Luna comes back, but Luna winds up being she doesn't appear in a lot of episodes, and I don't know what kind of political power she's given. They never address that because it's a children's show for like 7-year-olds. So, yeah. So this is one of the funny things is that you get people, like I say, there's a certain amount of over-analysis that you can do where you can be like, oh, what about the emotional implications and da-da-da-da-da. But, there's weird stuff. There's just like having these god characters, like these gods and princesses, even for a kid's show, like it can make writing very hard. Like when a character is supposed to be in your stories, like so strong that they are essentially like a mechanism of God, they screw up most of your writing. Like they make it to where like you can't have any kind of conflict. 'Cause it was like, oh yeah, no, we have this thing. Like there's a dragon in town. Like, if you imagine going back to the first season where they're like, oh, there's a dragon in the mountain, what do we do? Like, Twilight could have just brought the whole mountain down. Like, if we look at where Twilight is now, she probably could have gone to the mountain, just brought the whole mountain down on top of the dragon. There would have been no conflict, no contest. It would have been easy. I'm not entirely sure if she's that powerful now, but that's mostly because the writers have pussyfooted around how strong she actually is. They don't want to go over the top and then have it be that she's, unstoppable. But, yeah, no, she's gotten to be a super boring character as a result. So yes, so that whole characterization thing, the Alicorn thing, that's kind of what it focused around a lot, like why it's weird to write those characters and why they're creepy, and how when they get into your sort of stories, they take up so much space, and they become kind of their own. Like they're more important than everything else. Like you can't just have a god. Sort of be there and just get away with it for very long. Like it can't just be like a minor thing. So there was more to that fic. Like I say, it's a 3-part thing. It's very long. It's very well written, and I recommend that you go check it out. If you like the Rainbow Dash Presents, we actually stuck it sort of close to the original fic. It's a good fic. But anyway, though, going on into sort of the technical stuff for this, this was the first Rainbow Dash Presents that we ever had a full team on. In the past, it's just been me and Pederep. I would do the writing and voice acting for the most part. Pederep did like Dinky and LaFonda in My Little Dashie. And of course, we call them like Alan and Alice or Spottable Bus or other people to help do vocal stuff. But essentially it was sort of just a 2-man deal. And then, with a couple of other people to come in when we needed help. But for this one, though, we had quite a few people working with us. We still had Pederep, but Pederep focused mostly on animatics. With the exception of, he did the opener, like the first 4 minutes or so, I think, of the thing. And then the last closing stuff, like the stuff in the barn, he did that. I believe he did not do the fire. That was our animator who did the fire. But we had a good, at least like 6 core people that were working on the thing. Pederep did the animatics, so he did the scene layout and everything like that. He did the framing and the composition and everything, Then we had Hunter and Pencils on backgrounds, Hunter, Niff, and Pencils. Pencils, if you're not familiar, he's been doing the Marble Pie comic, which has been popular on 4chan. He's also got a Tumblr. You can go check him out. Hunter Niff, I believe, has a DeviantArt if you want to go see what he did. But those 2 guys, they did all the backgrounds, and there's a fair number of backgrounds, so there was quite a lot of work on that. It was kind of interesting. Like Pencils has done some professional work. He's a good artist. He's got a very solid. He's got just like a very solid. He's got a very solid amount of skill. And so it's kind of funny, like when we first looked at things, like we were like, yeah, okay, so we're gonna do this, and he just had these very well defined, like very professional looking backgrounds that he was drawing, and I remember kind of looking at that, and we're like, we're gonna have to, bring it down just a little bit, so it's all kind of fits together, because one of the things that we did is working with the team where we have more than one person doing, you know, any sort of aspect of the project, is that we have to bring it all to a level that we all can hit and then try to hit that style. So like the first thing that we did is we had Petter draw up some sheets, and he's like, these are some characters, and the sheets are actually really amusing because there's a bunch of jokes written into the character sheets. He's like here are the characters, and we've got the hex codes for the colors and everything like that for the colorists, and you know, he's got like, you know, turnarounds for the characters. He's like, this is how I draw all the characters and everything like that. And it's kind of funny because like he's got little pointers and stuff like that, and like a couple of them are relevant, but like a bunch of them are things like he'll like point at rarity, and he'll be like sluttiest horse or something like that. He's just got like these little notes about like the characters, like things he dislikes, like Apple Bloom. He's like best pony in show, you know, these kinds of things. You know, so there's a lot of amusing jokes in the character turnarounds in our reference sheets for this stuff. But anyway, though, yeah, Hunter Niff and Pencils worked on the backgrounds. On the actual core stuff, like for most everything after the intro and before the finale, most of that was done by Copypastas. And Copypastas, you can also find her on Tumblr. She's Tumblr. Copypastas is an artist. You can see there's a slight style change. After Petter is done with his section of stuff, like then Copy takes over, and she winds up. It's a little bit different. Like she draws the noses just a little bit higher. If you're looking for it, you can tell when the transition comes. But Copy did a huge bulk of that. Pretty much the core body of the actual drawings. She did all the line work. Is what she did, and then we had later on, just before Twilight runs off with the book. That was Norman Rangel. He did the art there, so we had just one more changeover, and Norman did that. And you can tell for sure, like Norman, you'll be able to tell when he takes over because the characters start to develop a more rounded kind of look, like their arms are more like circles in a way. And Norman is actually our animator. He was the one who did the animation for Jim of the Romantic Journey, and you can tell that like he's got the sort of rounded angles. And the nice thing about that is that when you're doing animating, if you've got a nice round angle, like it's very easy to animate. Like the characters just kind of roll into emotion and so on and so forth. So the characters, they have like their arms kind of curve and more, and yeah. So you can sort of tell like that'll be Norman for just a little while, and then it goes back to Petter, and Petter does the finale. But anyway though, it starts off as line art though, and then you come back in and you do your coloring, and we used Flash for most of this thing, which produced some interesting conflicts. Because Petter actually did the opening stuff, I think at 30 frames per second, because we had, like, he was doing it solo initially, and then started to get burned out, and he was like, oh man, this is way too much work, I don't think I will be able to do all this. And so he actually rendered all that out at 30 frames per second, and he was doing that frame by frame. So, you know, none of that was done in, like, Flash or anything like that, he was just doing, like, frame by frame. Now the thing is, like, if you're doing Flash, a lot of times what you would do is you would set up rigs. And this would save you a lot of time. You draw like a full turnaround of the pony, and you would do like a bunch of different rigs. But because we were doing still frames, and a lot of the scene composition involved coming down from different angles and looking at characters from different, it's a little bit harder to do rigs, where like a rig will all be kind of from the same perspective. Like you don't do like, oh, here's my full turnaround of the character from this angle, and then here's a full turnaround from up at this slight higher up camera angle. Like rigs, they save you from redrawing a certain amount as long as you draw them from that, you know, typical straight-on perspective. But if you need to do different sorts of composition, you find yourself, you know, doing hand drawing, and the hand drawing stuff is often nicer. It's a little bit more fluid, it's more pretty, but rigs are cheaper. So we didn't do rigs for Rainbow Dash Presents. The whole thing was still hand drawn. It was all like every single frame was hand drawn. But working in Flash was interesting. Because, you know, we move the project from person to person, and as you do that, you wind up with more mistakes. You're more likely to run into trouble. In fact, I did just a little bit of the coloring. Not very much of it. Like, I did, like, probably 30 seconds of coloring. And it was funny because, like, we got the line art. You get the line art back. But what would happen is, like, the characters would be standing, and their legs would trail off screen, or something like that. Or they would be, like, partially off screen. And so their bodies would just open up, like the lines would just be open. So you go and you get your colors and you try to close off all the lines and do all your stuff. But if you weren't careful, you get things like their little eyebrows, you know, like in the back there. they wouldn't have color, like in the eyebrows. So there's at least one scene that's screwed up. There's probably more than one, but I caught one on the final render that had, like, Twilight's eyes were just transparent. Like, the corners of her eyes were just transparent, like we missed the colors. And the reason that's easy to run into with Flash is because Flash is kind of it's a frustrating program in a lot of ways. And you can work in layers, but it's not strictly the way that Flash wants to run. Like how can I put it? It's a vector program. So, like, you know, say when you're working in Photoshop, or like I use Paint Tool SiY a lot. Like, you'll do your line art layer, and that'll be a top layer, and then you'll start doing your colors on a layer below, and you'll just draw your colors like underneath the lines, and you draw these nice smooth curves, and you fill everything in, and then you might use the paint bucket tool. If you've got a lot to fill in, it depends on what exactly you're doing. But with Flash, because it's a vector program, what it will try to do is it's trying to kind of make a calculation and say, like, okay, so I go from point A to point B. And so if you're drawing in like a layer below, which is feasible, then you wind up like, I don't know, you wind up with these jagged lines, or Flash will just do weird things. It's crash prone, like, I don't know. It's strange, it's difficult to describe, but we essentially just, colored in the lines is all that we did. We just took the fill bucket and colored in the lines. And so, of course, like, had we released it like that, you would have just seen like a lot of solid colors. The backgrounds, of course, were all done, more meticulously. I think they were done in After Effects, because you can import After Effects into a Flash file. So that was done in Photoshop. But the actual coloring and stuff like that was just done in Flash. So we had the limitations of Flash, and instead of coloring, kind of in a traditional way, it was sort of more like it was a little bit more computer-ish. So Flash, yeah, Flash. It's a working program, but has some limitations, has some drawbacks. So yeah, we've got some errors. There's a couple of places, like I know I also spotted Rainbow Dash's hair kind of splits at the seams in a couple of places. Same deal. Hard to say what might have happened with that. I think that maybe someone was doing like a fill bucket, and maybe they had a setting turned on that they shouldn't have, and it didn't get totally filled, or or maybe just the vectors got screwy. I have no idea. I have no idea. But anyway, though, once we finished the color, we had to go through and we had to dump bucket and like color in every single frame. We went back and we actually did the shading in After Effects. So all that shading, that's done like by hand, frame by frame, like every, just bring it up and do that all one frame at a time, and make it all look nice, framing, lighting, highlighting, all that fun stuff. So yes, so it's quite a lot of work, even with the team going into that. And in fact, we were originally scheduled for 2 months ago is when we were trying to get this done, and we had a Gantt chart. And if you're not familiar with the Gantt chart, that's when you sit down, you lay out like basically everybody's job, and you say like, we want this done like on this date, and then once that's done, we can pass it along to this person, and then they'll get done by this date. And so you kind of track everybody's progress, and you can have multiple simultaneous, you can have simultaneous projects running in parallel, and like, okay, this will be done on this date, and we pass it along to this guy. And and if something gets off on the scheduling in the Gantt chart, then the whole thing kind of gets pushed back. And so like you'd be looking at things and you'll say like, okay, so this is messed up. This is a mess on the Gantt chart, and you've got to move your whole project on down the line. And originally the plan was to get that whole video done in time for BabsCon, and so we were pouring on the coals, and we were working as hard as we can. And like I remember, Pencil's got an injury. Probably, I think because he was drawing too much. He was doing the Marble Pie comics, and he was doing his best to make sure that those went up. He was posting like every day on the Marble Pie comics. So he was doing the Marble Pie comics, and then he would go like straight into, Rainbow Dash Presents backgrounds and stuff like that. And eventually he wound up getting an injury. It was just, I think, a repetitive motion injury. And he was like, yeah, I think I might be gripping the pen too hard because I'm starting to develop like pain in my fingers, and it's a persisting pain. So around then, I think that was about when Pencils started reporting an injury. We were like, okay, we are clearly working like as hard as we can and as fast as we can, and we're still like gonna be, a good several weeks late for BabsCon. So we'll cool off a bit and make sure that Pencils can recuperate, and nobody else like injures themselves or anything like that. Like nobody's pulling all-nighters or anything like that. And we'll just chill out. We'll do the animatic thing because the animatics were all done. We'll have the animatic for BabsCon, and then we'll finish this a little bit further down the line. And so we took the pedal off the metal a bit. And so instead of being like a few weeks late, we wound up like twice that length, like 2 months as opposed to 3 weeks late or whatever. you know, and we fell off the Gantt chart, and we kind of got into that. So yes, yeah. And then in the end, at the end of it all, we had Ved do the sound effects and everything. Ved is our sound engineer, and we're pretty pleased about that because Ved does professional quality. He's it's kind of funny, like his hard drive, he's got like terabytes and terabytes of sound effects. He's like, oh yeah, I have an entire folder dedicated just specifically to horse noises. And so he was telling us that, like, for example, when the masked guard leans out and is making like this grunting noise at twilight, that's actually the sound of an angry horse. It's just actually, it's slowed down a bit. So that's actually the sound, that's a disgruntled sound from a horse. It just like slowed down to sound like a, you know, it's grinding on, it's like a stone grinding kind of, in a way. So, pretty cool stuff there. He did, I believe, custom compositions for that stuff. The intro thing, as Dash is narrating, was the same one that we used for the Mentally Advanced series when Pinky wasn't narrating. And yeah. I believe that's what I got to talk about as far as the production stuff goes. Anyway, though, the thing about this, though, is people are asking, like, are you going to do more Rainbow Dash Presents? And I don't know that we are. We don't have plans currently to do more Rainbow Dash Presents. It's hard to say. I mean, if something ever seems like thematically appropriate, then maybe. I don't know what's going on with the show. If they plan to have like a season 7, I can't remember what anybody said about that, or what's going on. But yeah, I mean, like, we'll see. As far as what this does, though, this was kind of good because this was our first like big team project where we actually really sat down and had a schedule and said, like, okay, this person will work on this and this person will do that. So now we have a little bit of experience as a team, and so that means that we should be able to manage stuff in the future. And what we're planning on doing is releasing a bunch of original series, which we've talked about, based on Banana Republic. We haven't totally agreed on the name. I am currently pursuing the name Simi-Intelligent. Simian like a monkey, and intelligent and like intelligent. Simi-Intelligent. And it's about, you know, Ray, Peyton, and the Banana Republic characters, but redesigned. We're currently finalizing rig designs on that. I've got the scripts done for it. We're going to start working on things. What we need to do now is hammer out a schedule for probably a Kickstarter. And what we're going to do is I think that we're going to have to ask for a realistic amount of money. And it'll be enough to sort of jumpstart production so that we can get enough help to finish at least one episode at a pretty reasonable pace. And then after that, we're going to have to look and see how much support do we have to continue working on projects. And, you know, if we don't have a lot of money, like, we'll do it anyway. But the trick is that, like, if you don't have a lot of money, then things just happen slowly. So if it winds up taking off and everybody loves it, then maybe we'll get a bunch of support and we'll be able to just like chug along really fast and make a bunch of animations, you know, and there won't be a long wait between them. But otherwise, you know, it'll be a much slower process. We'll have, you know, we'll take our time. There'll be people on it working as they can work, and you know, we'll do our best, whatever the case. But yeah. Proof positive. We can come together. We can work on something. Stuff can be managed. And yeah. There is a DVD now for Rainbow Dash Presents. It's just all the content that's online. We've got some commentary on the episodes talking about, like, you know, what we did, you know, why we did it, stuff like that on the DVD. There's also some secret features if you want to do that, and a bit of original art. So if you guys want to support us with the DVD, that should be on our store. I think we're going to get that uploaded soon if we haven't already. I think probably by the time that this video goes online, we should have that DVD online, and you guys will be able to actually order it. I believe you can place orders now, and you'll essentially reserve a copy, and they'll ship you one as soon as we finalize the DVD. But yeah, it has everything on it. That includes a Star in Yellow, the Star in Yellow stuff, and yeah. I'm trying to think if there's anything else that I wanted to talk about as far as the writing and characterization stuff is what I know best, because that's what I do. Anything else? The animation. There wasn't really a lot of animation. That's going to be the thing, though, is this upcoming stuff. It's going to be like, it might be fully animated. We talked a little bit about doing it in the Rainbow Dash Presents style, where we do kind of an animatic thing. That would be affordable, and we could probably do it and get away with it, be less expensive. Yeah, I don't know. What we're gonna do, though, is we're gonna do a Kickstarter for that, for the upcoming original stuff, and we're gonna do like a short sort of piece to camera where the characters are like, oh yeah, this is what the show's all about, and if you want to support us, then here we go. And we'll launch a big thing, try and get like some advertisement, and get a lot of support, make a big fun show. and everything like that. So yes, that's the new Rainbow Dash Presents. To say, don't know if there'll be more. We did originally say that Bittersweet was going to be the last one, but yeah, I don't know. If circumstances change or we get really inspired to do something else, who knows? Who knows? No specific promises. I can't. I think if you're jumping in to support us in the hopes that you're going to get a new Rainbow Dash Presents, it's just be aware that it may not happen. I should promise. I'll just say assume it won't happen, but if you do support us, then definitely we're gonna be doing something. Like we're gonna be taking the support and putting it towards things. We did get some new Patreon support. I want to point out though, to people who put a lot of money on the Patreon, like we actually went up substantially. There was a couple of people who put some large donations on that Patreon. Be aware that we do those will be charged per video. So every time I upload a video, I upload like maybe 10 videos a month or whatever. So if you put like $20 down, do be cautioned. That's like $200 if you don't set a spending limit. So make sure that you apply your spending limit so that I don't overcharge you or anything like that. Be aware. Yeah, a lot of people now they do like bi-weekly or they do like a monthly kind of thing. But we do per video. So yeah, so don't let that trip you up. Be aware. Don't get caught. Yes. And otherwise, I think that's it. So yeah. So thanks everybody. I appreciate you watching the new episode. I really appreciate the people that came to see us. We got 1,000 simultaneous viewers during the stream, which was great. It was a lot of fun. I drank for the whole thing. Was reasonably intoxicated by the end of it. Had a good time. I really appreciate the support. That whole thing was essentially possible because of the Patreon support. Like, without it, we wouldn't have been able to pull together and do that episode. So yeah, so I suppose that'll be it. Thanks for joining me, everybody. I will catch you all next time.